What's going on, guys? It is Filmington, and I am back with a reveal. We're going to be doing SGC, and I also have a small order with PSA and a small order with Beckett that just came back. So we're going to start with SGC. But first of all, let's talk about some higher level topics like the recent price increase from PSA. I do believe there's also a recent price increase with Beckett. Most of their service levels went up by a factor of, I believe, either $5 or $10, which was significant, as was the increase with PSA. So with PSA, I believe ultra modern, so what they're defining as anything 2017 and greater, the bulk service there is going up 40% or $3, which is quite a lot. Now, a lot of people are probably complaining about PSA. They're being greedy. Personally, I think that there should have been a price increase that was like this a lot sooner. So probably around January 1st, revenues were ticking up, volumes were ticking up, and I thought, at the time, again, January 1st, the two top modern grading companies at the time were probably PSA and Beckett at the time. And looking at what Beckett was charging for their economy service, I just thought that PSA, being about half of what Beckett was charging at that lowest tier, I just thought they were grossly undervalued. And I thought that they could have afforded to increase prices at that point. Maybe not $3, maybe at least $1, $1 or $2, I thought. So unfortunately, I don't have a problem with the price increase, but I have a problem with the execution. The timing was very random. Middle of the month, they gave people no lead time, which usually they do. I mean, they don't have to, and I get it. You don't always have to do that, but it definitely helps, to kind of soften the impact across a lot of their key customers. But no explanation for why they did it, no lead time, and it was a significant price increase. And it seems arbitrary on the surface because it's only targeting a subset of cards. Why not do it across all cards, which is what I would have advocated for on January 1st. And it really comes down to one thing. It can only really be pointed to either A, they can't scale and they made an internal decision. We can't scale. Our backlog is nearing, 1.25 million at this point, given some unforeseen circumstances like COVID, but they just decided that they just couldn't do it. And if you look back at some of the notes from one of their earliest earnings calls this year, they talked about how a lot of the volume was from pack rippers. So undoubtedly it was from the cards from 2016 plus, or 2017 and up. What they've defined as ultra modern here, the cards that are affected by the price increase. So it is what it is. They can't scale for whatever reason. They can't hire fast enough. That could be a topic for a different video. And the business just isn't that valuable to them where they're willing to drown SGC even more with new modern business, which is exactly what's going to happen. So if people weren't taking SGC seriously already, if it was pretty cut and dry for those of you that buy raw cards to submit and try to get those back in a timely fashion in order to be able to get a nice little return on investment from that value bump you get from the graded cards, I think that a lot of people will have to pivot and rethink whether or not PSA is the best choice for them in the future. And it might be, for me, it's going to still be a card-by-card basis, but SGC will now definitely take a lion's share of that activity, I believe. So I try not to pump SGC in too many of my videos. I've already done that probably well enough already in a couple of my videos. I just don't want to be that guy that comes off as overly biased, unfairly biased towards any one certain grading company. But sometimes I just feel PSA keeps forcing my hand, which is what they did again most recently with their price increase. Not a lot of transparency, no explanation, and very arbitrary in the cards that it affected. All right, so let's get started with SGC. So this order took, this is my second order with SGC. This is my first bulk order. Did it with a couple of friends of mine, and 104 cards. I think about 40 or so were mine, and it took, I think, 32 business days from the time that they received it till when it arrived back in my house. So stated turnaround time, 20 business days. That's their slowest service. And I know a lot of people are experiencing longer delays. I know a lot of people are probably at the 40 business day mark, maybe even longer. I don't necessarily think that's acceptable. I hope that's temporary. I know SGC's publicly announced that they moved their grading facility, and that was part of the reason that was keeping them from being able to scale and keep up with demand. Given SGC's most recent move with no lead time to turn away all of that business, inevitably what's going to end up happening by increasing prices on the 2017 plus stuff, I think. So it's gonna be difficult, I think, for SGC to keep up. Hopefully by next year, I do still have faith that their turnaround times will be close to what they're advertising. I do believe that they value those. Not trying to make excuses for them, but I don't think PSA or Beckett has ever dealt with an increase of demand by 5 or 10x within the course of 6 months. You know, maybe PSA at one point their volumes doubled over 6 months, but what's happening in SGC and what will happen in the next few months, it could be 20x where they were 9 to 12 months ago, which is really unprecedented. So I do have faith in SGC, but I am annoyed because I know that my next bulk order will likely be closer to 40 business days, for the record. All right, maybe longer. So I submitted with SGC. We'll start with them. I'm going to be showing some PSA and Beckett cards afterwards. I submitted a lot of modern stuff. 2020 Top Series 1, which is what's in this stack here. This tall stack here, very tall stack with Yordan Alvarez, his rookie. I got some 9.5s, and I'm going to be talking about this theme a little bit throughout, but I haven't submitted through SGC enough. I haven't bought and owned too many SGC cards in the lifetime of me being in the hobby where I know really how they grade. I know I'm a little bit more familiar with Beckett and PSA and what they look at with regards to centering, corners, and edges, and how kind of relatively they are in regards to stringency with each of those facets of grading, or what Beckett would call subgrades. But yeah, with SGC, I'm not quite sure yet. So it's going to make my job a little bit tougher in the future for when I'm trying to decide, okay, these ones are going to PSA, these ones are going to Beckett, these ones are going to SGC. I don't quite know what the cards that are best suited for SGC are yet. So I didn't expect to get all 10s, so 9.5s are okay. This is their Mint Plus grade. And I believe I got 5 9.5s. I submitted a total of 26 Jordans. So no 9s with Jordan. And then come the 10s, and these are selling for about 40 bucks on eBay, which is probably well below what a PSA 10 selling for. It's probably right in the range of what a BGS 9.5 selling for. I think a PSA 10 at one point was going for close to 100, I think, maybe over 100. But that was because the pop was low, and it is what it is, guys. PSA is still winning the resale battle. Especially with 10s. With 9s, it's probably not quite as evident. But if you were to compare SGC with Beckett, then it's a different story, guys. SGC is actually doing quite well, and this is going to hurt Beckett quite a bit. The fact that they've been the number 2 for so long, a lot of people's number 1, and that SGC 9.5 Mint Pluses are basically already selling for what minimum gem 9.5s are selling for. Is that right? Maybe not. Maybe it is, because the weak 9.5 is a minimum 9.5 Beckett card with 3 9.5 and 1 9 subgrade, and you know, maybe that's what those cards would cross to SGC and vice versa. maybe it's a very similar condition. Personally, I think that a strong BGS 9 could also be worthy of a SGC 9.5 Mint Plus, but I could see arguments going against that, saying that a strong BGS 9 is really more equivalent to an SGC 9. And then the last one, I did get a pristine Jordan. I'm really happy about this one. This one I probably won't try to sell. I think this is just a personal opinion. I think right now, and it varies per card, per sport, per set, per product, blah, 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 blah. But I think that SGC's most undervalued grade might just be this one, the pristine card. I think it's selling for a little bit less than BGS Pristines, but that was when I checked 2 or 3 months ago, and things have changed a lot since then. Transaction volume has obviously been a lot higher with SGC, as there's been a lot more available for sale on eBay. But I think you're seeing slow adoption across, and I hate to see it, but it really bothers me. But I'm a part of a lot of PSA groups, whether they're just Facebook groups where you can only sell PSA graded cards, or they're the submission groups, because I do like to kind of split it up and not submit everything to just one party. And then a lot of people are, characterizing SGC as second rate or not good enough. It's a clown company. It's being compared to GMA, and that's just not fair. Actually, in one of my next videos, I'm going to show some cards I picked up in GMA slabs, and I'll give my commentary to that. But so Walker Buehler, I submitted some of these, I think about 6, and bought a lot of 10. Thought 6 were worth grading. This one got a 9, so I think this might be, this is my only 9 in the entire order, about 40 cards. I didn't get anything under a 9. With all this, as they call it, as PSA defines it, ultra modern stuff. Sometimes it can be tough to get a grade under a 9 unless you're Silver Jacobite. Just kidding, bud. So I got some 9. I got a 9.5 here. Walker Buehler is a guy I really like. It's hard to trust pitchers. I've been burnt before. Injury, Jose Fernandez's case, death. Rest in peace, Jose. But I think Walker Buehler right now is the sub, what is he, like 25? So the sub 26-year-old pitcher to invest in right now, if you were to pick one. All right, so he is turning 26 next month. And I got a few more 10s. And this would be his desirable flagship rookie. And this is his only flagship rookie. Even though it's horizontal, it's still a card that people love. And I did get one pristine. So really happy to get this. The second pristine card I got in the order. My first submission, I didn't get any pristines. And to be honest, I looked over the cards, but I didn't pinpoint any that warranted this grade. So really happy to get that. Another card that I'll be holding on to, because like I said, with the Jordan, with this, I just think they're undervalued a bit. Especially if you're to compare them to what PSA 10s sell for. In Jordan's case, it's just not fair. All right, but all that's going to change, as I've predicted and said in many of my recent videos, as the interest and market share in this hobby starts to transform. So Rome wasn't built in a day, guys. All right, so Yoan Moncada, this is his preferable Topps flagship rookie, even though it came second. I made a video where I talked about the different variants, the different use cases, and the hierarchies. At least, this isn't what I think. This is just what's happened with eBay sales. Just looking at the data, this is just more preferred over the Series 1, even though the Series 1 came first. This also has his White Sox uniform on versus the Red Sox uniform. And check out that video. I won't go into the reasons why in this video, but did get a 9.5. And these cards you can pick up for about $3-4 raw, maybe. And Yoan Moncada is a guy I really like. He was featured in my speculation series, which, by the way, was very performance dependent. So all of those like 6 to 9 month holds, they're kind of all thrown out the window based on there not being a season, because what I expected to actually cause the values to go up couldn't happen because there weren't any games played. But this is a guy I still like, and the White Sox have done a whole lot to try to be competitive in that division. It could be a playoff contender as early as this year if there is a season. And then I got another 10, and then 3 out of 4 10s. And submitted some other cards. There's one of these. I thought this was a guaranteed 10. Top, bottom centering is probably what did me in. Maybe a surface issue that I wasn't able to see. This isn't a card I normally submit. Throwback cards don't have a ton of resale value or collectability. All right. And this card's gone up quite a bit. PSA 10 is probably around 55. SGC, who knows? I've got this listed on eBay right now. By the way, a lot of these cards are listed on eBay right now, so check that out. There's a link in the description. But I pulled this out of a hanger pack, actually. I was able to get some hangers in the off season for pretty cheap, so 9.5. And then probably the nicest card in the order, in my opinion, is this. So wasn't sure that this would get a 10. This is the Action from Topps Heritage, Jordan. Back corner down here, and a little bit on the edge. Not the best, so maybe that was overlooked, or maybe the front was deemed nice enough to get that 10 grade. Centering is pretty spot on in this, so not always easy to grade these cards. You got to be really careful, and got to spend some time looking at the edges, because with the Heritage cards, especially with the black border and especially the back, that could really hurt you. All right, so that's it for SGC. Now we're going to go to PSA. So this was actually a pretty quick order for PSA standards, and given the COVID thing and the shutdown, and I'm sure next year and in 2023, 2024, 2027, they'll still be blaming their delays on COVID. That's the type of company they are. But March 1st, that's when they were logged by PC Sports Cards. That's who I'm now using for a lot of my PSA submissions. And got them back a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So that's not too bad, especially given COVID. The reason why I got these back is, I believe, because PC Sports Cards, not only are they probably considered a key customer of PSA, I'd be willing to bet that they're top 3, maybe top 1 in regards to volumes for any of the submission groups that exist on the internet, but also because the tier of service that I use, which they no longer offer, was 25 business days. And I was paying, I think, like $12 for that. So that is gone, and I'm very disappointed with that. And that just makes my decisions a lot harder too, especially with like the mid and higher end cards that I want to get back a little bit sooner, whether to use PSA or SGC. So, because you got to weigh all variables, you got to weigh the resale value, you got to weigh the value of the card, the bump it's going to get at the perceived grade that you think it will get. So you got to look into expected value, and you also have to weigh in what it could get if it doesn't get that top grade. You have to think about the turnaround time, opportunity cost, and all those fun variables. So with me, I try to make it as much into a science as possible. But this I picked up from a customer at a show. I have 5 of these cards now. Only one of them is not at least a 9. Top right corner, top left corner. I thought there was a chance I could get a 9. Now, I know a lot of people have been complaining about PSA's graders lately, that they're being harsher than they used to be. But based on my experience from this order, I wouldn't be able to definitively agree with that. I think that they were pretty fair. I think there were 3 cards that could have been between 2 grades, and maybe I got stiffed on 2 of 3. So, about what I expected, basically. And here's one that I thought I benefited from. C.J. Abrams, number /50, gold refractor from Bowman draft of last year. I like this kid a lot. He might not realize his power potential. It's kind of a tool he's got to work on a bit, but this is a guy that, upside Mookie Betts, downside 1 Pierre. So there's quite a lot of variation between those two. But sweet card here, and I should probably list this in my eBay store. If it's not up there tonight, it'll be up there this week. Next up, happy with this grade. It's got some edge issues here. Also got like this little refractor line here. So I knew it wasn't a 10. This actually came from an 8.5, and I snapped it out and resubmitted it, cleaned off the surface a little bit. Correa, kind of like Chris Bryant, just can't really crack into that like elite class of, top 10 or 15 guys in the hobby that really get all the love. But at some point, if he's to stay healthy throughout the course of an entire season, it seems like when he's hitting his stride, he's getting these nagging injuries and stuff. So we'll see. And of course, the whole Astros thing kind of has a heavy anvil on his foot right now. So next up, beautiful card. I picked it up on Facebook. A guy was trying to do a Raz, and I stepped right in. I don't personally do Razes, and he accepted my my offer. I think I was like 90% of the full Raz price with my offer, so I was able to pay him and get this card. And look at that, Mookie's not on the Red Sox anymore, but pretty soon he might not be on the Dodgers anymore, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But yeah, the red on red on red, no brainer. Had to send this to PSA, and who knows, this might be a PC card, because I think I might value this more than it's actually worth. And lastly, Kobe Bryant, second year refractor. So, this isn't a basketball channel. This might end up turning into more of a multi-sport channel based on my latest moves to diversify and such. But this, it's got a little bit of hulking. Hulking is like greening of the surface, a term that I heard from a friend of mine that, not sure if it's an industry term or if anybody else has heard it, but this, some of the older Topps Chrome cards, they can turn green over time because of, maybe it's exposure to sun, maybe it's just whatever, maybe it has to do with heat or humidity, I don't know. So it's somewhere in between, but the shine still looks beautiful on this. I was hoping for maybe an 8.5, but it does have, I think, a little, I didn't even realize that, like a little line right here, surface line, in addition to clearly it being very, very off-centered. And maybe the corners on the back, there are a couple of them that weren't the best. But sweet card. And Kobe's prices dipped a bit, probably like 2 or 3 weeks after he had passed away, after that huge spike. But they've gone right back up. Maybe not to where they were, but pretty high at this point, just like any other basketball player. All right, so with PSA, one thing that I didn't bring up was there's stuff going on internally with the board and the executives that are kind of running the show. There's pressure from some of their ownership, which I believe is like this hedge fund that owns part of their business, and that might have been part of the reason also with the price increase. It certainly helped the stock price of CLCT, which we saw, I think, almost hit 37, 38 earlier this week. I think now it's back down to about 32, 33-ish. But that could be a sign of future price increases for PSA. And I think with all of these price increases, PSA, Beckett, maybe PSA again, it would definitely warrant a price increase from SGC. So don't be surprised if they increase their prices too. I'd say be surprised if they don't provide any lead time or transparency of why they're doing it. They've been a company that's certainly valued that transparency, the whole customer service experience, no matter how you define it, turnaround time, etc. So I just think that with SGC, they're leaving some money on the table, especially if you're looking at some of the shorter turnaround times. I forget if they're 10 days or what have you, some of the more express levels of service. I think that there should be more differentiation, more of a differential between, the cheapest bulk service which their longest turnaround time is 20 business days, versus their higher tiers of service. I just think there should be more differential. I also think that given PSA's recent price increase with ultra modern, that there's room for them to increase prices on their lowest end services as well. So don't be surprised if you see something like that happen January 1st, sooner, who knows. All right, so Beckett time, beautiful card. Too bad the slab's cloudy. It would look so much better in a PSA slab or an SGC slab, but these thick slabs and condensation that gets trapped inside and dust just doesn't really do it justice. But here's the Gleyber Torres card I picked up for mid 600s. It was RCR 9.5. Of course, with a raw card review, you don't know what the subgrades are. It's going to give you usually an auto grade if the card's autographed, but it's not going to give you more than the overall grade. So I opted for the subgrade service because I was already paying for fast turnaround time. So why not another like $10 to get the subgrades? It's a lot easier to sell high-end Beckett cards if they do have subgrades. Granted, you do want nice subgrades if you're getting them, but even if you don't, sometimes it just the Beckett collectors are a fickle bunch, just like the PSA collectors are, and people like what they like. Beckett is being slowed down because I think of this, the very reason of what made them unique and liked their subgrades. I don't think that's a scalable way for them for the future. I think they're probably spending about 2 times the amount of time versus PSA and SGC on grading one card, just because they have to provide this attribution. And I think that's why they're really trying to push the non-sub service, and they're making that, $10 cheaper. Could be as much as like 50% cheaper, I think, which is quite a lot. But hey, I'm not willing to bet on that for myself. I don't want to hold a bunch of those cards for the future and not have subgrades on them. I'll do it for certain cards, but not for all cards, and not for this one. And I got the true gem, so really happy about that. It has some like edge thing going on up here, which I don't know if is what hurt it a little bit, but I was worried about that because I could see it in the card saver. Corners wise, back, bottom, right. You'll see some PSA 10s that have this because PSA doesn't care as much about the corners from the back, and Beckett clearly doesn't either. Edge thing up here, and yeah, you never really know when you buy an RCR card because you're not guaranteed that grade when you encase the card unless you do it directly at the show. I'd say from what I've heard, about 90% of the time you get back the grade that it's stated on the RCR card saver. Sometimes you get bumped up. I've heard success stories where cards have been bumped up to BGS 10 pristines, and sometimes it can go down. Ideally, you want to know the history of that card, where it came from, how many owners had it, when it was submitted, but you're not always going to know that type of thing. It's only protected by a card saver. You could put a book on top of that and really F up the surface or even the edges and corners. All right, next up, another RCR 9.5. Got this in a trade through Instagram, and I'm happy about this because clearly I loved the centering. I thought maybe it would even get 10 centering, but I could understand the 9.5. But I think the lower edges in the back, they just have a little bit of wear. And I thought that would potentially bring the corner grade to a 9. But of course, it's the surface, the thing you can't see. You have the least idea about from the looking at it through a card saver. And I'm going to keep this. I'm not going to try to crack it and wipe or anything like that. But in the future, who knows? Maybe I'll be a little bit more risky with some of the RCR cards. Because I could have always tried to submit this to PSA as well, but I won't now. And I love the 10 autograph grade. A lot of the Sotos are streaky, especially with the J. Sometimes they're also running off the card, and that is not good. 9 autograph with Beckett's going to take down value about 40%, 35 to 40%, closer to 40%. Knocks down the value to what PSA 9 would basically sell for, in my experience. All right, and lastly, one more card, and the biggest disappointment of the bunch was this that I picked up from my buddy Raw. US 175 gold. Don't need to really talk about that. You guys know what this is. I owned a BGS 9.5 Min Gem earlier this year and I sold it. And I could have sworn that this was nicer than that. And the BGS 9.5 Gem had 3 9.5 subgrades. And it had a 9.5 or a 9 corner. And these corners, if you were to look at the card like this, a little bit further away, these corners look stronger. But if you bring it closer, and this is the corner that I pointed out in my review, it's clipped a bit. I think the fact that it's gold, it's harder to see like the shadow, but it's a little bit clipped. So that's unfortunate. I don't know if it was accurately graded, but I guess it's pretty close. The corner's pretty bad. I think that I will crack this out. And the back is super clean. I think I'm going to crack this out and just try to submit it to SGC. One of the nice things about not submitting a minimum grade, and this is if you're comfortable with cracking the card out of a slab. I wouldn't suggest this for other people, but for me, I don't usually include minimum grades because if I don't get back the grade I want, then I'll just crack it out. And one of the things that's nice about submitting to Beckett without a minimum grade is you're getting all this information. You know, you're getting all this information about why they graded the card a 7.5. You wouldn't get that with SGC or PSA. So that will give me a more informed decision for what I do with this next. You know, it would have been a lot nicer if this gold border matched the label though, huh? 9.5 label gets that gold background, and this looks pretty ugly. I was talking to Lico3, he said it looks ugly. He also said that he's never seen a Beckett card get 7 corners. But that is it for this video, guys. Hopefully you liked what you saw. There's going to be some more content coming. Then we've got some life changes coming up, so I'm going to have to slow down the content, unfortunately. But hopefully you liked this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. Filmington out.